Hello, today is Friday, August 21st, 2020. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Just over a year ago, Jeff Sheldon, a partner at LB3, and I recorded a podcast that explained what robocalling was, and we highlighted what the government was planning to do to stop these pesky calls. Last month, the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, issued an order in the ongoing robocalling proceedings that my good friend and LB3 lawyer, Sara Crifasi, tells me spells trouble for enterprise customers engaged in any form of customer outreach by phone. On today's podcast, Sara joins me to explain this FCC order. Okay, Sara, no one likes robocalls, so why don't you explain how the FCC taking action against them can possibly be bad?
Well, trust me, Joe, I'm definitely not here to defend or promote robocalls. And the FCC's actions aren't so much bad as they are short-sighted.
Okay, explain that.
So let me share some quick background before we dig into what's going on right now. When people talk about robocalls, they're usually talking about illegal robocalls, those that violate the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And everyone's familiar with these calls, the ones telling you that you owe the IRS money or that you've won some kind of vacation timeshare. What we're not talking about are the legitimate robocalls that companies might make to customers with whom they have an existing business relationship. Think of your bank making an automated call to verify a credit card charge or offer you a promotion that supplements your existing purchases. You're totally right that no one likes illegal robocalls because they are incredibly annoying to carriers and subscribers, both enterprise and end user customers. So it's in everyone's best interest to stop them.
Okay, so far so good.
Right, but so the challenge is distinguishing between the two and blocking the illegal calls while letting the legitimate calls go through. Last year, the FCC permitted carriers to block suspected illegal robocalls using what they called reasonable analytics. Talk about a vague term. And that standard, which was not defined by the Commission, essentially permitted carriers to do whatever they want when it comes to blocking, as long as they can justify it as based on some kind of rational analysis, which, by the way, they don't have to disclose the details of. In the recent order, the Commission officially granted carriers a safe harbor if they block suspected illegal robocalls using reasonable analytics, as long as they include caller ID authentication information.
Caller ID authentication information. Is that the stir shaken system that I've heard about?
Exactly. STIR-SHAKEN is the cringeworthy acronym for Secure Telephony Identity Revisited and Signature-Based Handling of Asserted Information Using Tokens.
Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah, it is. But STIR-SHAKEN is basically just a framework that works to verify that a call actually comes from the number indicated in the caller ID, or in the event of permissible spoofing, at least that the call entered the US network through a particular voice service provider or gateway. And caller ID authentication has been in development for the past several years, and a number of carriers have been implementing it within their networks. So with this order, the FCC tells carriers that if they have proper caller ID authentication systems in place, then in the event that they inadvertently block legitimate calls that they've mistakenly identified as illegal robocalls, they'll be protected from liability with a safe harbor.
Okay, so I see how things are adding up. The carriers can use whatever underlying analytics they want to block suspected illegal robocalls. They don't have to disclose the analytics that they are using, and they're protected from liability if they make a mistake, so long as they use caller ID authentication systems in their decision making. So where does this leave legitimate callers such as enterprise customers?
A large number of legitimate callers, including enterprise customers, have commented over the last couple of years in this proceeding that carriers have been increasingly blocking their illegal calls, both robocalls and normal calls, without providing any notice, such as an indicator like a busy signal. Callers have also told the Commission that if they are able to discover inappropriate carrier blocking, which is usually only possible through internal testing, that when they try to get the carriers to unblock calls, they're left without much of any recourse. Not only is it incredibly hard to find the contact information at the carriers for unblocking, but it's also hard to find employees who know what to do to solve the problem. Also, a number of the carriers have outsourced their blocking practices and management to third-party analytics companies, adding another hurdle to remediation of inappropriate blocking.
So, what can enterprise customers do to try to make sure their calls don't get blocked? And what would you tell them to do if they encounter inadvertent blocking by the carriers?
Well, with this safe harbor, carriers are likely to up their blocking capabilities even more than they already are doing. So it's important for enterprise customers to take some protective measures. I'd advise enterprises to contact the carriers that they use for their call centers and discuss their standard use patterns and typical or planned calling campaigns in attempts to avoid being flagged as potentially illegal by the carrier's analytics systems. Enterprise customers should also monitor and test their call completion rates and document whether they receive any blocking signals if the tests reveal that the calls aren't going through. And finally, make sure to document details about any remediation efforts that you undertake and the subsequent experiences with carriers as they arise.
Okay, great advice, Sarah. Thanks for providing your guidance on this. Now, it's definitely worth noting that the robocalling proceeding we are discussing is very active right now. And Sarah, she's fully engaged in advocating on behalf of large enterprise customers. The FCC is looking into whether it should impose any additional requirements on carriers who block calls. And they really need to hear from businesses that will face some serious problems if they don't get this right. So, if you'd like to discuss this topic further, just get a hold of Sarah by shooting her an email or give her a call. Also, if you have other ICT requirements, you can contact Sarah, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues by giving us a call or sending us an email. You can also stay current by subscribing to our Staying Connected podcast, checking out our websites, or by following us on LinkedIn.